Do you ever wonder what a Gen X thinks? Welcome to Gen X Slices.
Okay, all right. 10 Oreos. You guys have been asking me about the 10 Oreo story. We've told it before, but on different platforms. Um, so let me go back over it here one more time. This is Raising Kids, 10 Oreos, and Liberal Thinking. There, that should that should pique your interest. Okay, so real quick, when you raise a bunch of kids, you learn a lot of things. One of the fundamental things I've learned about raising kids, and I think we're all guilty of this as children, is asking for things proportionate to what the other person has. And I use the Oreos as an example because it's come up so many times, and every one of my children's heard this story. But let's say a child walks up and they're hungry, and you have a box of Oreos. You got a full box of Oreos. Like 40 of them in there, however many there are. And they look at how many you've got and say, why don't you give me 10 of those? Let me have 10 of your Oreos. That doesn't seem unreasonable to a child. You have a box. And that's their mentality. They aren't taught that. No one sits them down and says, now, when you walk up to someone, you look at how much they have and you ask for proportionately for what they have. Now, if you've got 10 Oreos, the kid will ask for one. If you've got one Oreo, they ask for a bite. Do you see where this is going? This is why it's a 10 Oreo story. And kids just instinctively know that. And then when they get to be teenagers, it comes to money. If they think you're struggling with money as a family, they may ask for $10. If they think you got a lot of money, they may ask for $100 or more. Kids instinctively ask. It's built into just human nature. And as children, they grow up. Parents sort of reinforce that, don't we? Yeah, because you're looking at what you're not telling the kid, you never sit a kid down and say, well, why are you asking for 10 Oreos? Do you deserve 10 Oreos? If you deserve 10 Oreos, you should get 10 Oreos, even if I only have 10 Oreos left. And that's right. If you think that child should have 10 Oreos, they deserve 10 Oreos, they ask for 10 Oreos. If all I have is 10, I should give them all to them. They deserve that. They've earned it or whatever. But we kind of reinforce the thing of, you can't have all my Oreos. What do you mean you want my last Oreo or my last chip or whatever? But you get the idea. When we kind of reinforce that by our actions, we're setting them up for the future. Now follow me on this. So these kids grow up, we all grow up with that sort of mentality of, well, don't be greedy. Don't ask for all of it. It's not going to hurt them to lose 10 Oreos out of a box. They're never going to miss the 10 Oreos. Just give them 10 Oreos. Or if you got a stack of 10, just ask for one Oreo. They're not going to miss one Oreo. Giving up one Oreo won't bother them. They've got 10. Just ask for one. Seems pretty harmless. At least it did to me. Influencing the lives and raising 32 children. I kind of had that same mentality all along. In fact, maybe I even taught it. Maybe I walked up and said, hey, don't ask for half. That's not, you don't want to give up half someone's Oreos. Be polite. Be polite. Only ask for it. Maybe I brought them up wrong. Maybe we all did. But nonetheless, that is a lot of the prevailing wisdom, isn't it? You look at what someone has, and if you want something, then you ask proportionately. And that didn't bother me when it was 10 Oreos out of a box. Probably didn't even bother me that much when it was $10, when they got to be 13 or 14 years old. Maybe it didn't even bother me when they got old enough to ask for money for a car, and you need a certain amount to help them buy a car or give them the money to buy a used car. Maybe that didn't bother me either because, proportionately for what they were asking for what I was doing. Maybe that didn't bother me either because I wasn't upset that they were being greedy and I wasn't upset that they were shooting for the moon. Maybe I endorsed this whole thing. Maybe I pushed this thing down the road in a way I shouldn't have. But now you come to a time when these kids are now in leadership positions. Maybe they're running for government, maybe at a state level, maybe at a federal level. But they have the same mentality. And there is a lot of liberal friends of mine that have a very typical liberal mindset, not all of them, of course, where they want to solve problems by throwing money at it. Whole different discussion, in my opinion. But the way they achieve that money is they tax people or they just go get it. One of the arguments, one of the discussions that I've been in, and this is kind of funny because this particular discussion came from one of the children that I raised in this fashion of proportionate 10 Oreos. Now they're standing in front of me in their mid to late 20s, I guess it was, and they're telling me that the government should take rich people's money. Yeah. And without batting an eye, their thought process, well, if you've got someone like Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, they have hundreds of billions of dollars. Let's take 2 or 3 billion. They won't miss it. They won't even know it's gone. It won't. It'll never affect them at all. These are the exact words of not just this particular conversation with my son, but with many liberal friends that I have. They won't miss it. They're not going to know it's gone. We could take that money and do something good with it. They got this many Oreos. We just need this money. We're not being greedy. We're not asking for all their Oreos. Just want a proportion of it. And there we are. It goes all the way back to how do people think that way? Why would you think it's okay to take someone else's money? Oh, I know. They justify it because they're mean capitalists. They're just in the world for money. They don't deserve it. They justify an anger towards rich people, and then it's easier to take the money because you're mad at them. They're not good people anyway, so who cares? But the fundamental part of it, the baseline of it, was they won't miss it. They don't need it. What are they going to do with it? This is the way it gets explained to me often by liberals who come to me with, and we have discussions. They're just talking here. But they say, do you realize that all those zeros at $200 billion, or if someone has $14 million, million with an M, they say there's just numbers on a bank statement. They're just a bunch of zeros on a bank statement. That's all it is. They never go count their money. They're never going to need that money. They don't do anything with that money. They're saving that money. So what if I take 10 million off of there? Or whatever amount. What if they have just one less zero at the end of their bank statement? Would they even know? Would they even care? Would it ever affect their lives? And I said, well, what do you mean affect their lives? Because that comes up in the conversation. Well, I wouldn't take enough money from them. I wouldn't take so much that it affects their life. I wouldn't want them. I'm not trying to damage them. I'm not trying to hurt them. I don't want their lifestyle to change, but they have a lot of extra money that we could do good with. Well, first of all, it's their money. It's not yours. It's not mine. And how do you decide how much to take? How do you decide when it affects their life? What if they want to buy a $4 million boat? Are you going to tell them, no, you just need a $3 million boat? Where do you draw that line when you're taking someone else's money? And they're always just angry, because anybody who can afford a $4 million boat, they're angry at those people anyway. They have this much, and they want to take this much. Back to the Oreos. You don't need it. You don't need that much. Tell me we haven't heard kids tell us that. Dad, you don't need that much. You don't need that much cake. You don't need those many cookies. You don't need all those dollars in your... The kids do this. Yeah, you don't need that. I've determined you don't need that. I mean, it's like a 10-year-old. Look, you don't need it. I've determined you don't need it. It's the same thing when you're 40 and you're trying to take someone's money. You don't need all that money. Come on now. What's all that money? You're just sitting there. That's a very tough discussion to have. It's a long discussion, and I believe in my small, dumb mechanic brain that it stems from Oreos. Yeah. 10 Oreos, but that's the short version right there. There's 10 minutes on how I think that sometimes our human brain processes from a child, and how that can translate into real world stuff at, at an age. That's a big thing when you get older, and it's no different. When you were 10, you wanted 10 Oreos because your dad had a lot, and when you're 30, you want 10 million because that rich guy over there's got 100 million. We've been trained that way our whole lives to think that that's okay, and I know it's different, but when you get past all the bullshit and you bring it back down to the nuts and bolts, the street level stuff, there's a bunch of politicians that want 10 Oreos because you aren't going to miss them. That's it, guys. I've repeated this story a few times. I hope this one's as clear as the other ones. Anyway, leave your comments below. Thanks.